You're in great company. I'm Rae Bonney, and with you for the next hour. My show today, as always, is about people, recognising that it really is okay to not be okay. So turn up your radio. Today is the first week of September and hopefully the end of this cold weather here in Melbourne, Australia. I wonder what it's like in other parts of the world. Yes, a big hello to all of our local and global listeners. Now, before we get into things for the show today, yesterday we celebrated Father's Day here in Australia and other parts of the world. It's a very happy day for many, but a torturous one for countless others and their children. I actually encountered a man in the supermarket on Saturday, the toothpaste section to be exact, who was crying and begging into his phone to be able to see his kids on Father's Day, negotiating just even an hour, and it just broke my heart a little. I can't even imagine what it might be like for him and his children. Something to consider. But men, as you know, are very high on my agenda for all the reasons one would not expect. And today we are pulling apart a rather delicate topic of Australian men who've been born into the Muslim faith. And to help me dive headfirst into such a not in a very delicate way, is my mate Angela Mellak, with so much focus on the human rights issue, not only being able to marry the person you love here in Australia. Today we bring you another marriage-related injustice to consider, and she's the founder of Digital Women's Network and a person capable of taking on any kind of challenge, usually achieving glittering success. And today she talks about one of her ultimate obstacles, and that's being married to a Muslim man here in Australia. Unbiased or unconscious bias, exclusion, discrimination, and family law are a few topics up for discussion today. And welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rae. Lovely to be here.
It is, isn't it? Not as lovely as it was a few or maybe half an hour ago when you're driving around Box Hill trying to find a parking spot, though.
The joys of Melbourne traffic when it rains a little bit, but it's sunny now, so
yeah,
a nice day in spring.
What is it with people, do you think, as soon as there's a bit of water on the road, we forget road rules, we forget all of those driving lessons that cost us $1 million. Well, I'm not saying we as in me because I'm an exemplary driver, as you are as well.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think also merging, I think we lose all of our P's and Q's and we, I don't know, lose the ability to be able to have some common sense. But
sense ain't common though, Ange, in my world. And, you know, the focus of my show, where it really is okay to not be okay, we pull apart some of these really delicate issues around the human condition and how humans behave around that condition as well, whether it's from your own perspective or from those around you. And, you know, I've been dying to get you on the show for ages, but you're probably a tad busier than I am. At times. I think we both work about 8 days a week.
Yeah, running two businesses has its challenges.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. And, well, I've known you for a very long time. It must be more than 5 years. And we met, I can't even remember where we met.
I think it was mid-2000s.
Yeah, but I don't know why we met.
I think through the Who group.
Okay. You came to see me.
I did.
To be consulted to.
Stalked you online first.
But what you did tell me was a really powerful story straight up, and you just returned to Australia after some time away because you're like me, you're a bit of a travelling Wilbury, but during your most recent visit you'd travelled around Morocco.
That's in 2012.
Yes.
So I had an adventure with a couple of friends. My girlfriend was the editor of Feast magazine, and also who
did you say Feast?
Feast. ABC's
you need
Feast
to put
magazine.
a T on the end of that really clearly for radio, because that sounded like it could have ended up in something else. But anyway.
The cooking magazine and Peregrine Adventures, and we did a tour of Morocco. And that was in 2012, which was amazing. I ended up in Marrakesh, and, you know, me and my busy life, everything's so planned and detailed.
Yes.
That in the last couple of days I decided to spend some time travelling alone. No plans, everything, just see where the wind takes me, a little bit like you.
Oh, well, this time last year I just returned from Morocco and spent time in Marrakesh as well. And when we were talking on the phone last night, talking about, you know, people's fear of travelling to, you know, countries where there's Muslim people because of the ridiculous distortion that's created around such people. And I said, you know, there was one thing I did notice, though, while I was over there. I felt totally safe. Surrounded by enormous kindness and care, what amazing people. Like you said as well, you said, did you notice religion?
Exactly.
And I said, well, I kind of did, because it was during Ramadan, and to try and find alcohol in that place. As you know, I like my wine. And I spent days without alcohol. So
it's a little drier at Ramadan. But generally people don't judge you on being a religion.
No.
And I think that that's a huge, stark difference from being in Morocco. My husband's obviously from Morocco, and his friends are both Christian and Jewish, and some of, the most famous Moroccans are Jewish, but majority of the population is Muslim. The king of Morocco, his wife is this flaming redhead.
Yes.
They've banned the burqa because they see the burqa as more of a cultural thing than stating in religious. But they've got the king's advisors are both Jewish and Christian. There is no judgment on religion.
He's a very cool king, isn't he?
Very cool.
And she does, she's very, very prominent as well in the communities around Morocco, and making huge change around stuff, and very, very different to what we might expect.
From the royals.
That's right.
Yeah. I think the forefathers of that king, his grandfather, was really, really smart in making Morocco such an agricultural rich land. It did sacrifice a lot of the education of children being kept instead of going to school on the farms.
Yes.
But now you can see, my cousins in Liverpool who are all go, the best tomatoes in the world are from Morocco. And I'm like, how would you know? And they go, because it's in our supermarkets. So Morocco is actually feeding and will continue to feed Europe.
Yes.
And it's only 20 minutes from Spain. So you know what it's like.
Well, you can
there.
swim if you were allowed to.
They did. But now it's really interesting because, especially in Marrakesh, you can go 20 minutes one way and you're in downtown Paris with your Chanel's and Louis Vuitton and all the gorgeous outlets. And then you go 20 minutes the other direction and you've gone back 200 years.
Yes.
You're in these souks with the sounds and the smells. And
that's where I spent most of my time.
Yeah. And the way that people dress and just the kindness and the honesty and the genuine spirit. And that's all I've experienced in being there. And I've travelled the world. I've been to most continents.
Yeah.
So I love it.
So you literally ran into Mo, didn't you?
Well, it's a bit
Was
of
it in the souks?
It sounds like such a romantic story, but it was so not meant to be. I literally came out and I was on a mission for a friend who wanted some fridge magnets. I mean, that was the exotic extent of what I was planning to do.
Yeah.
And I got lost down the first road and there's these little kids pestering you, a little bit like Bali, but not as extreme. If you went Bali years ago.
Yes.
And that was, 2012, these little kids are like, dead end. And I was like, shut up. And I was just marching
because
down
these
a dead
people,
end.
one of their sources of income is helping lost people like us to get to safety, because I actually got stuck in Marrakesh as well. I'd forgotten to take water and I was walking around in circles because unless you can read
Arabic or French, and
half the streets you have to turn sideways to walk down.
Yeah, they're tiny, aren't they?
So these people can be very, very useful, and why shouldn't you be paid for something that is? I mean,
they only wanted a couple of dollars or just to hang around little kids, but I was ignoring them. And I grabbed this woman.
I digress.
It's all good. I grabbed this woman and I said, "Do you speak English?" And she said, "No." Grabbed another woman, and then this guy came up and he's beautifully dressed, really well spoken, and said, "Hi, can I help you?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm looking for this shop." And and
the fridge magnet shop, thank you.
That's right. I didn't actually announce I was looking for fridge magnets. I didn't want to, look at that pathetic. But he ended up dropping me off near where I needed to be, and very, very graciously said, "Here's my business card. I'm the manager of a couple of riads. He's a lawyer as well, and." If you do get lost or need anything, please don't hesitate to call me. And I'm like, you're cute. Never going to see you again. I'm not going to ring you.
I know him. He's very cute.
And then off I went. And then another 3 or 4 hours later, and I was in another part of the souks. At this point, I'd moved up the chain to buying argan oil. And so I was on this shopping mission because I've got a master's degree in shopping.
Yes.
And I was paying for my shopping, and as I was going to pay, the woman turns and looks out. And, of course, you follow someone's gaze. And I look out and I see this guy again, and he waves and I wave. And next thing you know, he came in, and the women in Morocco, if you recognise someone and they think you know each other, they instantly make you a cup of tea.
Yes.
So
mint tea poured from a very elevated.
The higher the pour, the more the little bubbles you get underneath.
Yes.
And the better the bubbles, the better the quality of tea. So,
I'm sorry, I have to digress again because on The Bachelor last week or the week before, they had a Moroccan supper or something, and they had the tea, and he pours it from here, like, and it really offended me because I said, please do not disparage something that is so traditional. And,
well, it's like the Chinese tea ceremony.
Yes.
The Moroccan tea is so important.
Oh.
The way that they prepare the leaves.
Yes.
We had some yesterday. My husband made some at home. I'm very blessed.
Yeah.
And you cut the fresh mint and you make it with the gunpowder green tea leaf, and you wash it and you drain it, and it's just a huge.
Can you please are you allowed to send me the recipe, or is it secret?
You just have to come over, love. You'll have to come over.
I know, I'm sad. Anyway, digress again.
Yeah, no. So we ended up having this long cup of tea, and I gave him the Spanish Inquisition. What is this for wives stuff? What is this? What is that? Some of his questions and his responses were, that's a cultural thing from a long time ago, and it's, really not recognised as much anymore. And the one silver line that he said, which I'll never forget, was, I've only got one heart, so I could only ever be with one woman.
Oh, wow.
Which is hilarious now to think about him saying that, but he's so funny. And, we ended up going out for dinner that night, and then we became fantastic friends. And over a period of a few months, we just corresponded online, on Facebook, on emails.
Oh, so you came back home?
Came back to Australia, and then he came to visit. And whilst he was here, he managed to...
Was that when you kissed, or did you kiss over there?
Yeah. All over here. It was all really... Because over there it's frowned upon. You don't go running around, running off with tourists because they want tourists to feel safe there. So they're very strict about that. So you can't even be in a private space with a local, which is a bit overzealous, but I can understand why they do it. So Morocco's got a really good
culture.
Clean...
must be respected.
Of course, yeah. And, obviously over there it's quite different. When you do start to court someone, the family usually knows about it. So it's quite different. But yeah, so he came here and was sponsored as a cultural mentor, which was unbelievable. Stars aligned again.
Yeah.
And then, later on we got married. So it was an interesting piece, though, when you meet somebody from overseas, what the government puts you through.
Yes.
You go from, this is a really great person and let's give our relationship a chance. And the government's like, so you're going to get married? Because these are the visas you go on. You're either, potentially going to get married or you get married. So,
yes, yeah.
You
fast forwarded a little bit through there because I actually have just received a text from, an email from one of our listeners saying, hey, would be really interested to hear more about some of the challenges you experience, like, introducing this concept to your family, your friends, given, that how the world has viewed, Muslims especially since September 11, and what that might have been like. So after the break, love to talk more about that. That was from Bill Ward. Said that. Thank you, Bill, for your question. And interesting coming for a man as well to know what some of those challenges
More
might
than
be
happy
like.
to tell.
Because it does sound very romantic. And look, to be honest with you, I found Morocco to be totally romantic, even though I was on my own. And but just the vibe, the culture, and the help and the support that you receive in all of those communities. And I travelled from Casablanca all the way across to Marrakesh, so got to see some of the big cities like Fez and, some of the, smaller little towns where, women are creating the argan oil that you talked about, to sustain themselves, which is the way their communities are set up, I think is as good as they can be doing.
Absolutely.
As well.
I mean, I think it's very rich. And I think what they have is so much of what we're lacking.
Yes.
I mean, the community that everybody really is part of is like family.
Yes.
My husband always tells me that you would never date your neighbour or your friend because your mother may have been the wet nurse while they were being born.
All right.
That's how close it is.
Yeah.
They always help each other out, especially in the smaller villages outside of Marrakesh.
Well, what you've just described, Ange, is that Mo, in his environment in Morocco, is seen as quite an affluent person, somebody of good means and stature. For those of you who've just tuned in, I'm in the studio today with Angela Mellak. She is the founder of Digital Women's Network, which is all about connecting. But today Angie's telling her story about the ridiculously unnecessary challenges she and her family face because her husband, Mohammed, is born in Morocco and is a Muslim. How terrible. Sorry, that was sarcasm I used there. Now, Ange, you told us a bit about our story, because it is like our story, isn't it? Because I feel like I was there. And but when you and Mo decided that things were a bit more serious and that you were going to form this relationship, what was the real response from your family and friends?
My family was really supportive. My father gave him the Spanish Inquisition again.
Yes.
What are you going to do with my daughter? Where do you want to go? And I think dads are always a bit protective and quite tough. My parents, my mum and dad just adore him, and mum loves him to bits. I suppose we've never really seen colour, religion. It's never been a big thing in our family. My Irish family in Ireland obviously are all feeling very, I suppose, aligned with Mo and his plight, given that the Irish, the way that they were treated for so long as well. So it's really interesting. Friends were great. There was a couple of weird instances where I went to a family event with friends. Their family was there. And I'll never forget, one of my oldest friends' father-in-law met my partner, came in, and we were having a beautiful birthday for their daughter. And the father said, "Oh, what's your name?" And he said, "Oh, my name's Mohammed." And you could instantly see the drawback on this guy's face, and almost didn't want to shake Mo's hand. And I was gobsmacked. The thing that Mo did, and he turned this completely around, was he made it his job to sit with Terry and speak to Terry all afternoon. Before you know it, Terry's got his arm in arm going, "This is my best new mate."
Wow.
Because he saw it as a challenge of being able to say, "Well, I'm going to smash a stereotype
Yes.
and I'm going to tell you what really it's about. And if you've got any questions, come and ask me." So it's been interesting. I think seeing Australia through his eyes has really challenged me as a person. I've been witness to the struggles of somebody who's so well educated, who speaks so many different languages, speaks 4 different types of Arabic. He speaks French fluently. He's studied law and has a Bachelor of Law. He has run successful businesses and worked in real estate and property in Morocco, helping foreigners translate, to coming here to barely getting a job as a dishwasher.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've been part of helping, I wouldn't say support, but have been around,
Absolutely
during those
supporting,
times where it's been really, really trying for both of you, in that what you've just described, this plethora of experience and skill and attribute, and on top of that, being a damn nice guy. And
very networked
and
as
very
well.
good looking.
Always
Is
helps
why
out.
what is this, what is this barrier for people not being able to get past, what we call, I guess it's unconscious bias, but that's just a cop out, I think, to call it that.
I think that people have got to get more educated. I think that people have got to understand a little bit more about different cultures. I mean, the Australians, the natives, Aborigines,
Yes.
were all migrants at some point.
Yes.
I'm a migrant. My whole family's English and Irish.
Yes.
I was actually born there. I came to Australia when I was a little girl, but I identify as being Australian, but I am of British heritage.
Yes.
Everybody is. The only people that aren't are the Aborigines. And one of the most interesting things I think I was saying to you on the phone the other day was I really encourage people to go to the Islamic Museum. It's down in Thornbury, and it is fantastic. And the guys who founded that decided to go on a tour all of Australia to find out the Islamic heritage within Australia. And surprisingly enough,
Or not,
yeah. The very first mosque was built in Maree, and if you date back to Burke and Wills and you see all of the pictures,
that's northern New South Wales, isn't it, Maree?
Yes,
Somewhere around there. It's hot.
It's very warm. And you look at Burke and Wills travelling through the outback, and what have they got in the background? All of the camels and the Afghanis, and the Afghanis were all Muslim. So back then they had the white policy, so you could not actually marry. If an Afghanistan person wanted to marry a white person, they weren't allowed. So they could only marry the natives. So as a calculation goes, 10% of the Aboriginal bloodlines are actually of Islamic descent.
There you go.
Exactly.
That's really fascinating, isn't it?
But that's all at the Islamic Museum. You can go there and check it all out and then see some of the notable Muslims within our community that, they don't have to run around and go, yes, I'm a Muslim, yes, I'm a Muslim, but they are, and they're great people.
Well, do you know what, Ange? I challenge you on air. Well, it's not really a challenge. It's more of an invitation. I would love to bring Rory, my 8-year-old, along to Thornbury Islamic Museum with you and Mo. And
love to.
If Mo could be our special tour guide and educator, because, I would say that I'm very liberal in my thoughts around things. However, what you've just described now is such a beautiful part of our heritage.
Spot on.
And, we're not recognising
that's right.
part of our tapestry. But, you're talking about even then we're putting these, clinkers on marriage as well, telling people who they can and can't marry. Comes back to that, again, the ridiculous debate that we're having here in Australia about people marrying who they love. But in your case, you almost had a gun to your head. Well, that's metaphor. You didn't at all. But, the encouragement that you had to get married fast. From the government kind of is very, very contradictory to not being able to marry who you love. Tell us about that.
It's just the Department of Non-Immigration, isn't it?
I don't know.
I mean, look, they've got
who works there? Ring up.
They've got their policies and they've got their procedures. It really makes you a lot more aware than I suppose most other relationships. I suppose it makes you think much more deeply about any forming of a relationship. Whereas most people would meet someone on Tinder and decide, I could date them for a couple of years and, who cares?
Yes.
I think once you're dating someone, especially from overseas, you've got a lot more to think about. And I don't, in that one sense, it was quite stressful and traumatic at the time of, being pushed into decisions very fast. And the other side, I don't regret it by any means. And I think that as a person, I've grown and I'm a better person from knowing my husband, who just happens to be Muslim, and his values and his traditions and the way in which they do things is so much more respectful than what I witness here and whenever I've dated an Australian guy. So, for me, I'm thrilled with the outcome.
Yes. It's funny, when I was in Morocco last year, I was speaking to a Moroccan man without fear. And we talked about, the arranged marriage piece. And I asked him about it because I said, it's like for us, because we're so free to marry whoever we like and, who we fall in love with. So what is this arranged marriage? I think as Rae, he said, it's actually cooler than you think, because more often than not, the person is chosen by your family who love you and would not want to see you with somebody who's going to be detrimental to your well-being. And secondly, have a look at your divorce rate down in the Western world. Like, really? And ours, it's not perfect. Neither are perfect, and there are terrible outcomes to some. But on the whole, it's something we grow up expecting. So we've already got our head around it.
But they do have choice.
Yes,
and the parents bring different suitors to them, and they make that decision. And you may not get on with the person, so they decide yes or no.
Yes.
And my husband was put in that situation too, and he decided to choose for himself. And his parents have been the most welcoming and loving.
Yes.
My mum flew over in 2014 and we went on a bit of a tour down to some of the beautiful Essaouira and a couple of other places with my husband's mum. So my mum's, the mother-in-law, and my mum shared a room together. They couldn't speak a lick of the same language.
Yes.
And my mum loved it. She was exposed directly to what it was like, the praying 5 times a day. And my mum does yoga, and she just felt it was really peaceful and really enjoyed it. And Sadia, my mother-in-law, and my mum Jeannie got on like a house on fire. And they would laugh about it when they'd speak to us and say, Sadia, my mother-in-law, would say, we're like 2 deaf people in a room.
Don't you love the language is not about speaking?
It's not.
Quite often when I'm talking in my spheres around, mental health, you don't need the words. The feeling of being cared for is just so very powerful, so much more powerful than being told.
And I think, one of my missions and one of the things that I try to do is help influence other people to learn more about different cultures. For me, obviously, I've married a different culture, but I grew up, my oldest friend in the world was from Peru. Her whole background was
right.
Spanish. So I've been exposed from a very young age to different cultures because I've lived in Australia.
Yes.
And instead of running away from them, some of my best friends were Greek. I lived in Greece for a small period of time in my 20s.
Yes.
I just embrace different cultures and learn what I can and smash the stereotypes. It doesn't exist.
Yes.
I've got so many great Muslim friends. I've got so many great Jewish friends, Christian friends. I don't judge anybody by the religion. I judge by their actions and who they are.
It probably has a lot to do with how you were raised by Jeannie and
Dorian.
Dorian. That's his name.
Yes.
Are they listening in, Ange?
Oh, probably.
Oh.
My father's Welsh and my mum's from Liverpool. So very British, very Anglo-Saxon.
Yes.
My brother has married a Malaysian Chinese girl and
Yes.
I've married a Moroccan. So we have a very multicultural family.
And how
gathering.
lucky. How lucky are you all to be,
Exactly.
to have that to draw from in the way that you may raise your children and hoping that, the Department of Immigration don't become involved in that, because that was one question I had for you, given that even though you're married to Mo, he still doesn't have his permanent residency. So what happens when you have children and that doesn't come through? Does he get deported?
I don't even know. I don't even think about that. But I'm sure that hopefully it'll all work out. We're both law-abiding citizens. We both work and pay our taxes. He'd like to go back to study law here as well eventually. Unfortunately, a lot of his subjects he'd have to redo again. So financially, we haven't been in the position to be able to sit down and afford all of those international student fees.
Yes.
But we're hoping in the future that he would be able to take some of that back.
But as you said, all of the money you are earning, including Mo, all goes back into Australia.
We want to buy a house at the moment, and unfortunately
Yes.
he can't go on the papers because he doesn't have his paperwork yet because there is a backlog, which is a bit crazy at the department. So hopefully they can organise all of that. But, I suppose it's just one of those things. I just try not to worry about it and get on with life.
Well, you like that because you and I have shared many stories, and every time we don't talk often, but when we do speak, there's a lot to talk about. And you have a few stories around travel as well. And, travelling abroad from Australia with Mo has also caused some drama.
It has, just to say the least. Obviously visas and what have you have been a challenge, and, it just becomes a completely different perspective. We went back to the UK. Obviously, I'm a British citizen, so I've got that dual opportunity. And when we were living in the UK, unfortunately, we couldn't get his visas approved in the UK as well.
Yes.
So that was an absolute debacle. But, I think it was all roads leading, and Mo's like, I want to go back home. I want to go to Australia.
Yes.
So he really identifies with being here as being home, and so we came back. But, I suppose it's one of those challenges.
Yes, but an unnecessary one in my eyes. And I understand bureaucracy and I understand process and procedure because it does keep us safe to a point.
I hate the word safe. What is safe?
Okay, cool.
Sorry. I'm just going to say, because I think it's so media blown out.
Yes.
If somebody's going to do something, they're going to do something like that idiot who mauled down all of those people in in Flinders Street. Did they ask what religion he was?
Oh, somebody probably did.
Bottom line is it wasn't, he is this, or he's branded as that. He was a lunatic. He was an absolute, in my eyes, that was terror. That was a terrorist act. He terrorised people as he mauled them down. How could we be safe from that?
Oh, that's right. When people are talking about going to dangerous countries, I remind people that you can be out at having lunch in Burke Street and die. And, I have my views on that I look towards our health system and how people who are seriously ill mentally are not being identified as being a danger to themselves and their community. Like Rosie Batty's husband, he was identified as somebody who was very, very ill but allowed to, to continue in the community. So, I'm not talking about apportioning blame, but I'm talking about how we actually look at the organic stage of things and how we can create a much better structure and environment for people.
We're safer if we're together. If
Yes.
we start to understand what's challenging, and the more we isolate different groups because we don't understand them, that is when we become unsafe.
That's right. And there's a lot of talk about tribes, this tribal thing that the whole world is sort of being segregated into different tribes to, as you said, I love that you brought up, this word safety, to keep safe. But really, there's such a disparity then between things that, you're right. And let's write a book after
I
this.
went and worked for the Islamic Council of Victoria, and I noticed so much about the youth suffering, these young boys and young girls who were of Muslim faith, suffering their isolation. And that's what's going to drive issues in the future. They need to be embraced. We need to be able to be more open. We need to look at what they're doing. We need to communicate more. We need to allow them in. They need to allow us in.
Do you know what, if we took, you don't like the word safe, I don't like the word them, because who's them? Are we them?
No, but that's how we treat.
But that's how we talk about,
yeah.
them, the Muslims, them, the gay people, them, the children, them, the divorced people, whoever it might be. But like you said, if we started calling it us, you just started that thing, right? Us as a world. I think it just automatically takes away that stereotype as well, that we label everybody with a them. It's not us. I'm not a them. I'm somebody because I'm a counsellor. So when people say, go and see someone, that's me. Now, Ange, we're going to go to another break only because we don't have to really, but I did want to play a song, and it's a song that's very special to you and Mo, and you mentioned it to me when we came into the studio. Going to tell me about it?
It's just a gorgeous song, and I suppose it was quite popular at the time when we first met, and it was one of the songs that we always listen to and remind ourselves of when we first met.
It's an Angus and Julia Stone song. It's called Big Jet Plane. And that's another song again, all over. Now, Ange and I were just getting a little embroiled in a discussion there where I did take my eye off the button, and but we're back. How are you, Ange?
Good, thanks.
Great. Now, we're coming to the end of the show. We've only got about really 10 minutes of talk time yet, and that's what we were discussing. How are we going to use this time? But then I thought, Ange, why not just come back? In fact,
love to.
Last week I had a divine person on my show. His name is Hadley Fisher, and Hadley has created a thing called the Resilience Agenda. And Hadley is a recruiter by trade, so he works for Sharp and Carter across continentally. So he lives in Switzerland because that's where his love lives, but he is actually from around these parts as well. So his organisation is very supportive in him being cross-continental. But the Resilience Agenda is an initiative that Hadley's created around getting people to be more mentally fit and agile, and it comes in the shape of a diary style thing, very beautiful. I should have brought one in for you actually, Ange. And but basically it's somewhere where you can, just record how you're feeling, what you're doing. It's got a whole heap of inspirational stuff attached to it. It's really cool, and you can find it at Readings Bookshop. I can't remember. It's cheap as chips for what you're getting back from it. And Hadley, I know, he's back on a plane very shortly. I think he's going to a wedding in Samoa or something, and then back to Switzerland. But he was on the show last week and the week before. And we had the pleasure of interviewing Robert de Castella, who is a very well-known marathon runner here in Australia, won a swag of gold medals, and we spoke to him. It was really inspiring to hear about what Robert de Castella is doing around raising awareness of mental health.
Great.
And donating his time and effort into creating great runs for people to do that. So speaking of great initiatives, we've heard a lot about your story and, some of your challenges around, having married the love of your life. But as a sidebar to that, you haven't just been laying dormant, organising, mint tea and what are those things called? Those Moroccan tagine. If I saw another tagine while I was over there, I would have stuck one in my eye. Digital Women's Network. Now, I was around you when you started thinking about this as a concept. I thought, here we go. Here we go. Here's another Ange thing. Because when Ange goes out into the world, she doesn't do it with a ripple. She does it with a splash.
You're so kind. So, when I was in the UK and I was working with Heston Blumenthal and a whole bunch of property developers and doing my thing over there, I really noticed how much I relied on my network, and really thought when I came back, and also seeing the suffering that Mo had gone through, I thought, what can I do? What's my little piece that I could create that normalise the playing field? We brought people together under one focus and one guise, which was about your professional skill sets, regardless of your religion, colour, race, anything. So also tying that into women aren't the best of networkers. Most of my career I've worked in male-dominated industries and I've loved it. I've worked in print media. I've worked
Not
in
all
real
of them,
estate.
Anne. You haven't loved all of them.
They've been challenging. And I've worked in automotive industries.
Yeah.
So I've worked with lots and lots of men, and most of my mentors have been male. The best advocates I've ever had in my career have been men. And so I thought, well, let's try and share some love for the women. Let's try and help women, number one, become better networkers and learn how to be advocates for each other, because you've always got to pay forward before you can receive.
Absolutely.
And also to try to bring in a space where we all felt that we could contribute and also learn from each other. So the Digital Women's Network works on both your professional skills as well as your personal skills and softer skills like communication. Everyone's become thumb happy and they lose the art of communication. So we hold monthly events in my space in Collins Street. And our next...
Very swanky, by the way.
It is gorgeous. We're very blessed, the work club there. And this month, coming up on the 13th, we've actually got Finding Balance. So we've got a Chinese doctor, a medical doctor, and a beautiful mother and daughter team. Sarita and Maxine, who I believe I introduced you to. And
yes, I know them well. Yes.
Yeah, good. And so we're doing a whole piece on how to help people find balance. We'll be doing acupuncture demonstrations as well as a variety of other exercises on the day. So,
yes. And what I love about your events, and I've actually spoken on a panel at one of yours, I was probably a more contentious participant than you expected, but still it's a space where there is absolute freedom to explore your own thoughts, and I love that about your space. It's not all very left or right wing stuff and not what you want it to be, but very happy to see how it plays out. And because of your network and it's so extensive, you're able to invite so many different kinds of thoughts and ideas into the space and into the network to create this. And you said to me before, you've gone from how many members?
30 women in a boardroom. We started in 2016 to over 10,500.
Wow.
And we're about to open in Sydney. This lovely woman has been contacting me from Brisbane. She wants us to take it there. We've been talking to some friends in London. And again, we just want to create an organic space. And there is a lot of other women technology groups starting up, which I think is fabulous. The more the merrier. There is a gender diversity thing that needs to be looked at. We need to get a better cross mesh of women and men in powerful leadership roles, but I think in the tech space and digital space is quite a bit of a lack for women. So I've been writing for different business magazines as well and trying to raise a little bit more awareness. And on my board, I have all sorts of different nationalities with all sorts of different backgrounds.
In fact, I had one of your board members on the show as well here. I interviewed her because she's a comedian. I can't remember what her name is now, but yes, you certainly do have diversity on your board, which is great. And also I had Regare on, and that was beautiful.
So we teamed up with Regare because I really believe in helping other charities and bringing awareness. Like the Sister Works, like my earrings today are from Sister Works, which are new arrivals into Australia who are supported by them to try and help them create their own businesses.
Where are they from?
Sister Works.
Yeah, but what country?
Here.
Oh, right, okay.
So the new arrivals in Australia, and the company's called Sister Works.
Yes.
And Regari runs the Gomo Foundation, which I'm so inspired by.
Yes.
And so I wanted to do
the Gomo Foundation, for those that didn't hear the show, is inspired by Regare to help girls in Africa to get access to education, which is just thrilling. And he's one of those beautiful demonstrations that if you can make change to one person, that's good enough.
And his story, he was sponsored to be here.
Yes.
And then he turned that around by a beautiful Australian family.
Yes.
He went back to give back to his, little village in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
And discovered that the best thing that he could do for his culture and for his community was to educate the women, because they were the ones who wanted to be the nurses, the doctors, the teachers.
And when he came here, guess where he was beautifully supported in education? One of the very few education institutions that put up their hand to take him was our very own Kingswood College, just up the road here in Box Hill.
That's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't. In fact, we stumbled across it when we were having the when I was doing my research, actually,
Great.
because I'm a great researcher.
Yes, no, Ragari is fabulous. And so we're always trying to help
Yes.
different charities. We're also working with Dress for Success, which is trying to help women trying to get back into the workforce. We're also looking to work with SAP and trying to help women that may have had a child and struggling to look at, their confidence maybe a bit down and they're wanting to get potentially back into
SAP, you mean as
the
in?
big global SAP
As in technology
companies.
Yep.
So we're linking to a variety of other things. And this started purely as a passion project. My full-time company that actually makes the money is Digital Whitespace, where we work with property developers and different clients and we help do all of their marketing and digital comms. But the Digital Women's Network has grown as my second business, which is doing really well, and it's something that we're really proud of. All of the board members are just fabulous. They give so much of their time to really help give back. We're about to announce a partnership with the Australian College of Marketing. So we're about to push all that out in the next couple of days.
Not surprising, Ange.
So we're going to start educating people underneath the events. So we're going to have a proper course that's, recognised from globally in the UK from the Chartered Institute of Marketing as well as California.
Wow.
So we're trying to provide a space that does monthly events as well as providing a really good pace.
But such a fertile ground as well for meeting, and I've noticed when I've been there is that
it's not just women that go.
Well, that's right. It's not. This is not a gender thing.
No,
even though it's Digital Women's. That's a great focus to have to see how, this stuff doesn't discriminate, and it's not a gender thing. Some of our very, very severe social issues are not gender related. No. They are people related. So when we're looking at some of the topics that I don't mind jumping headfirst into, like domestic violence and the wage gap and all of those things, think about it as a people issue. But as soon as we silo it off into gender issues, it just becomes a competition that I'm not willing to have, but I'm very, very happy to talk about it. But that's what your organisation provides.
Absolutely.
Is,
most of our speakers are men. I mean, John Yo, we're so blessed. We're doing a boot camp with John Yo at the moment, who is the curator of TEDx Melbourne.
Yes.
The longest TEDx running in the world. And he's doing a one-day boot camp on the 23rd of September where he's teaching people how to pitch and get their message like a TED talker, which will be phenomenal. And we're getting discounted rates to do all of that too. So we're very blessed.
Can you...
And supported by lots of men.
That sounds really, really interesting. In fact, there's another text from one of my friends who wants to remain nameless, but said, hi Rae, great show. Great to hear Ange. How do we get in contact with Ange to go to the John Yo thing?
It's all on our website, so digitalwomensnetwork.com.
That's all you type in?
digitalwomensnetwork.com.
And it's a beautiful site as well.
Lots of pink.
You would expect it to, being given it's, your area of expertise.
Yes, we build websites.
I love feedback, as we all do, good, bad or indifferent. So you can contact me, as many people do. Join my Facebook page, Presenting Rae Bonney. Just type that in and you'll find me. It has been a fabulous show, Ange. You're an absolute natural.
Thanks, gorgeous.
And hopefully you'll come back.
I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.